All right, pause real fast so I can give you some feedback on the first one. Overall, pretty good. Careful the direction of your curve. Careful. Not a lot of people did it, but make sure you're also doing cosine. Like, these are questions that would stink if you knew exactly what you're doing, went all the way through, got the period right, all the key points right, and then you made the wrong shape at the end. So be really, really careful with that, okay? On your test on Tuesday, you're going to get a blank next to amplitude. You're going to get a blank next to period. You're going to get a blank next to phase shift. You're going to get a blank next to vertical shift. And they will all be worth points. So if this was that case on next to phase shift, I would literally write none. And next to vertical shift, I would literally write none. And then on your x-axis is where you're going to label your key points. So be careful. The other thing is watch your shape. Like some of you are making almost like a V, okay? It's rounded. It's rounded on the edges and it's rounded at the bottom. And it's not as important right now, but when we get into our reciprocal functions, what you'll do after the test, you'll need to extend these curves in both directions, and then you definitely need it to curve, okay? But it's not a V. It's got a curved edge, so just be really, really careful with that. So for 2, again, overall pretty good. The A is -3, the amplitude is 3, the B is 2 pi, the period is 1. So then your initial key points are 0, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1. I would say some of you got hung up on the negative on the amplitude, or on the negative on the A. That reflects it. So it's sine, which means it starts at 0, goes down, up, up, down. Overall, pretty good. Like 3 or 4 of you went the wrong direction, though, so really be really, really careful. So on 3, pay attention to your phase shift. If there's a phase shift, you don't start at 0. You start at the phase shift. So my initial key points were 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi based on the period being 2 pi. And so that is a standard key point. If you are taking your test, let's say you're taking your test on Tuesday, and your period is 2 pi, and you have now done this 3 or 4 times with a period of 2 pi, and you already know your 5 key points, obviously that's going to help you with time. If your period is 2 pi, then your key points are 0 pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. All the quadrants as you move around your circle. Obviously, that will help you with time. Then your phase shift is a positive pi, so be careful because some of you put negative pi. You set the parentheses equal to 0 to get what the phase shift is, so you know it's moving to the right pi. So then on the bottom, I added pi to each of the key points, and then you get your adjusted key points. That first key point is at pi, not at 0. So you make sure you shift it to the right of your y-axis, and that's where you would start. The amplitude this time was 1, okay? Again, be careful. First of all, be careful. Again, I'm seeing like maybe you're getting the key points right, but you're graphing the wrong curve. That would suck. Like as soon as you see what the question is, you're going to get a sine and you're going to get a cosine, okay? And they're going to be worth 10 points apiece, which means that's already 20 points of your test. So please make sure that you, even if it's like maybe at the beginning, as soon as you see cosine, make your little C. If it's your sine, then make your little S. Whatever it is that you need to do to remind yourself at the end. There's a phase shift this time to the left, pi over 2, and I know that because I took what's inside the parentheses, set it equal to 0, and solved. So it shifted everything to the left, okay? The other thing is what was not on this class kick that you will see on your test is a vertical or horizontal shift. A vertical shift. So let's say this said +1 at the end. After I plot everything, I've already flipped it. I've already marked my key points. I would then take each of these points and shift it up 1, okay? That's the easiest way to do your vertical shift. If you try to do your vertical shift before you do your reflection, you're going to make a mistake. Don't do it, okay? Because it's different. It's not just flip it upside down then. It's a flip it over the x-axis, which gets messy, okay? Questions on anything relating to the graphing before we jump into the rest of the stuff?
On the test, is it going to be formatted like this?
A little bit. Like I gave you a blank for amplitude. I give you a blank for period. I give you a blank for phase shift. And I give you a blank for vertical shift. And then your key points, you'll literally label on your x-axis. That's how I'll check those, and then you'll graph. Okay. But there is part, like you'll get a little bit of point, a little bit of point, a little bit of point, and then the graph at the end. All right, so let me go through. 18 questions. What did I just say? 5 with the calculator. 5 with the calculator. And 14 multiple choice. So 14 multiple choice, which means there are 4 free response. And 5 of the multiple choice are calculator. There's 18. The graphs count for double. So your sine curve and your cosine curve are going to count for double. Everything else is the 5 points. If you open this is your chapter test review, okay? We're going to cut it before the end because the end, like typically yours, I go all the way through. And we're stopping it at 4-1. But 4-1, 2, and 3 were what your quiz was on, right? 4-1 was all like the little stuff that if you knew it, it was easy, but there was a lot of information in here. So if I'm converting from radians to degrees, then I'm going to take my theta, I'm going to multiply it times 180 over pi. If I'm going from degrees to radians, I'm going to take my theta, I'm going to multiply it times pi over 180. In both those scenarios, we would cross cancel, simplify, do whatever you need to do, but keep it in those terms. What are two angles that are complements? What do they sum to? 90 degrees, and in radians, that's what? Pi over 2. So your complement in degrees would be 90 minus theta, and in radians would be pi over 2 minus theta. Your supplement is 180, so it's 180 minus theta or pi minus theta. Remember, these cannot be negative. So if it's bigger than 90 or bigger than pi over 2, we say it does not have a complement. And if it's bigger than pi or bigger than 180, we say it does not have a supplement. You cannot give a negative answer there. For coterminal angles, if it's in degrees, we add or subtract 360 degrees. And if it's in radians, we add or subtract 2 pi. We want to go all the way around the circle one more time or one last time. And then the last thing that was in 4-1 that will be on your test is your arc length. This is your SOR. And theta has to be in radians. So that's a mistake some of you made on your quiz. Don't do it again. Okay, make sure you convert theta to radians and then multiply it times radius and then simplify. All that stuff, non-calc, right? None of that needs a calculator. That would all be part of the test. That's non-calc, and you'll keep all those answers exact. Okay, then came 4-2, and this was your unit circle. So, well, it started with your unit circle. So again, tomorrow I'll give you a little blank unit circle. I would say fill in. I would say fill in the degrees, the radians, and at least one section of the coordinate points. If you have more time, do it all, but fill those in and then add on your tangents. So that you can answer, it'll ask you it'll ask you to find the trig functions of any angle. It could either be a unit circle angle or it could be its coterminal. So I could ask you to find the sine, the cosine, the tangent, the secant, the cosecant, or the cotangent of literally like 31 pi over 6. So I would take something like that. I would convert it into a mixed number, which would be 5 and 1/6 pi. And then use your even odd trick. The odd tells you to go to the left. And then bigger than a half or less than a half. 1/6 is less than a half, so I know I'm at the over 6 in the third quadrant. Every over 6 has the coordinate point √3 over 2 and 1/2. And if it's in the third quadrant, then they're both negative. And my tangent at an over 6 is √3 over 3. That would be positive. So then I can answer any question. I can answer sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, or cotangent once you know that stuff, okay? Then we got into finding the trig functions using a calculator. I would say the biggest thing you need to pay attention to here is what? The radians or degrees mode. That's how you could really screw this up. Other than that, this should be easy, okay? So for something like the first one that's there, this would be in radians because there's no degree symbol. This would be in radians because there's no degree symbol. And this guy has to be in degrees. So I would do the sine of 2.4 in radians. Cosecant would be 1 over the sine of pi over 7. And then make sure you know how to use your degree minute second notation in your calculator. Remember, that's all in that like second apps menu. So sine 2.4, 0.67546. So we're going to say 55. 1 divided by the sine of pi divided by 7, 2.3048. And then the mode needs to switch to degrees. And it's 1 divided by the tangent of 23 degrees, 15. 15 minutes. And the seconds, which is above the plus, 48 seconds. And this is 2.3261. In 4-2 is your even odd functions. Remember that cosine and secant are even, which means we don't change their sign. And then all the other ones are odd, which means we do change their sign. So if I said the cosine of negative x is 5, then the cosine of positive x is also 5. But if I said the sine of negative x was 5, then the sine of positive x is -5. So sine, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent we change. Cosine and secant we do not. All right, then we got into the right triangle trig, which is where some of those word problems came from, right? We know SOHCAHTOA, and then we know their reciprocal functions. You'll get given information by way of like a ratio. It'll say the cosine of theta is 2/5, and I would set up a right triangle. Or it could say the terminal point of an angle has the coordinate point of 2, 5. It could give information in any of those ways. If it doesn't give you a second set of information, then this is in my first quadrant, because that's how we started this. So cosine of 2/5, I literally would just draw myself a triangle, and that's adjacent over hypotenuse. And then I would use the Pythagorean theorem to find the remaining side, and then set up your trig functions. You need to know your special right triangles, as in 30, 60, 90, and 45, 45, 90. If it's any size, then this is A root 3, and 2A. And this is A, and A root 2. If we're in the unit circle, those A's become 1. So it's A root 3, 2A, and then A, and A root 2. This section gave us our triples: 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 5, 12, 13, 7, 24, 25, and 8, 15, 17. All right, then came your cofunctions, which this is spelled wrong. Your cofunctions, remember they come in pairs. So the cofunction to sine is cosine, and it would be 90 minus theta. The cofunction to secant is cosecant. And the cofunction to tangent is cotangent. And then the reverse is also true. So that can go either way. I can flip-flop them. So I could say that cosine of theta is equal to sine of 90 minus theta. And the cosecant of theta is equal to the secant of 90 minus theta. And the cotangent of theta is equal to the tangent of 90 minus theta. And all those 90s can also be pi's over 2's. So let's say you got given information about an angle, whether it's like the sine, the cosine, the tangent, whatever it is, and then it asks you for the sine of 90 minus theta. What it's really asking you for is the cosine of theta, right? Those would be the same thing. Your word problems in the right triangle trig, this is where one that will come from your calculator part, okay? There will be some sort of thing relating to an angle of elevation or an angle of depression, something like that. So the PDF that was assigned to the homework, that was 4-3, would be good practice for those. There's also some on the review, but that would be a good practice for the word problems dealing with your right triangle trig. Mars.
Are we gonna have to memorize
The cofunctions? Yeah. I mean, sine goes with cosine, because those would be like the opposite of one is the adjacent to the other. That's like why they're related. And then their reciprocal functions are, and then tangent goes with cotangent, because if I draw a triangle, right, and I put theta in a corner, A is opposite, B is adjacent, right? But if I did the complement to theta, which would be at the top, this would be 90 minus theta, then the tangent of that one is B over A. So the cotangent of one is the same as the tangent of the other. That's why they relate. It's more like, here's information about a triangle, find me the tangent of 90 minus theta, and you have to know that tangent of 90 minus theta really means the cotangent. That's all it is. Make one swap out for the other. What do you think?
Do you need to write it?
Tomorrow I'm going to give you a blank unit circle, and I'll let you fill it in. And that's simply for time purposes. You won't have time to complete a unit circle and then take your test on Tuesday.
So we're gonna turn that in, and then you're gonna get it.
And then I'll give it back to you on Tuesday. Yeah. So if you do it wrong, hopefully you realize it over the weekend, and then you can change it on Monday, change it on Tuesday. But hopefully you know it well enough that you'll fill in. I'll give you like 5 minutes, fill it in. I'll take it back. I'll give it back to you on Tuesday. The unit circle. All right, then came 4. These are trig functions of any angles. So these, you got your coordinate points. You could have also gotten something like the tan of theta equals 8 over -6. okay? And it could say, find the remaining trig functions. So you would know based on the signs of that coordinate point, if it's -6, I'm going left, +8, I'm going up. I'm going to close it in. I'm going to put theta in the corner. And this is a perfect example of how your triples would save you time, right? Because the triple is 6, 8, what? Maybe it won't save you time, and maybe you're doing the Pythagorean theorem. 6, 8, 10. Take the 3, 4, 5 and double them all. You get the 6, 8, 10, okay? So now I should be able to find sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, and cotangent. It's not going to ask you all 6, but it'll probably ask you 1 or 2 based on that triangle. You just got to set it up. Our reference angles, remember in our quadrants, all the special angles, the reference angles are those over the same denominator. So if I had 5 pi over 6, then my reference angle is pi over 6. If I had 7 pi over 3, my reference angle is pi over 3. But in degrees, in the quadrants, they would go, first quadrant, the reference angle is theta. You don't have to do anything to it. Second quadrant is 90 minus theta. No, just kidding. It's 180 minus theta. In the third quadrant, it's theta minus 180. And in the fourth quadrant, it's 360 minus theta. So if I said, what's the reference angle for 215? I know 215 would be in the third quadrant, and I would do 215 minus 180. And I'd get 35 as the reference angle. And then it will ask you to draw angles. If it asks me to draw 1, 2, 15, I know it's that. And if it asks me to draw 35, any reference angle, I should know it's in the first quadrant because reference angles have to be less than 90. Yep. No, I'll let you write anything relating to your unit circle. So I'll let you write any of the degrees, radians, coordinate points, tangents, and all students take calculus. Those you can write. All right, you're going to get a word problem like the one, this was example 11 from the notes on 4.3, where I gave you a trig function and simply just plug it in. That would be calculator based. Make sure you know that that would be in radians, right? Because it doesn't say anything about it being in degrees. If this guy had a degrees symbol on it, now I would know it's in degrees, okay? But as it is, it's not. Questions on 4.4? Good. And we're right where we started the day. We know this stuff, right? This is 4.5. Your homework this evening is to do as much of that PDF review as you can. You don't have to do every single problem, but at least go through it and know what you know and don't know so that tomorrow in class we can go over some questions. And then at the end of class, you'll do your unit circle.